Are you not scared of God? It's a question many people are asked, especially if you live in a traditional culture or a culture where religion is very important, like India, most of Asia, and also parts of America, especially the middle and the southern parts, and some European countries that are still very conservative. There is this belief that you have to be scared of God, or God will strike you down, punish you, beat the shit out of you, hurt your children, hurt your job. God, in this case, is no longer an example of love, bliss, and consciousness. Rather, God has become more of a Mafia Don. If you don't pay the Mafia Don / God his weekly or monthly protection money, he will come beat you up. This might sound funny, but isn't this how people see God? In places like India, my homeland, there is a whole industry in collecting money in the name of God. On Saturday, you'll be punished by the evil Lord Saturn, the Lord of astrology, and so you must give him money. On Tuesday, you will have 1,000,000 accidents, and so you must give money to another astrology lord, or more surprisingly, Hanuman, a god who was supposed to represent love and devotion, but now represents extorting money from people on Tuesdays by scaring them. Even in America, people pay millions, and the same in the Europe and America, people pay millions of dollars to churches. Many of these churches, the owners of these churches have become millionaires. They build these huge, lavish churches. And same with mosques. It's the same with Muslims. You see these lavish mosques, especially in countries where the people are starving. Why are people giving money to temples and churches and mosques when they themselves are starving? It is because they have been told that if they don't, this God fella is gonna come and punish you. It seems to me God only has two jobs. One is to watch you when you are masturbating. And second, to collect money from you. I've said this before, but even in people who are supposedly atheist or agnostic, there is this belief, subconscious of course, that God will punish them. People live in shame for their choices, especially their sexual choices, like being gay, because they fear that they will be punished by a wrathful and hateful God, because they supposedly broke some idiotic rule their wrathful God made up. Let me say this for once and for all. I am not scared of God. God is not some dude who lives in the sky and rains down thunder and fire at us. It is surprising that even in the 21st century, we continue to believe such bullshit. We still believe God is something out there in the sky, in the forest, in some unknown dimension, somewhere out there, but not here. Anywhere but here. Because if God was here with us, we could no longer pretend that our idiotic rules about God are the real truth and not something we just made up to keep ourselves entertained. This God that we are so scared of was created by our own mind. It is our own mental projection. Psychologists talk of projection, which is an actual term. If somebody feels guilty or shameful or angry, they'll project their feelings onto someone else and pretend that it's the other person who is angry or making them angry. This allows them to escape the consequences of their own actions, as now it is the other person's fault for making you angry or guilty or shameful. This allows you to live with all your negative and hateful emotions and pretend it is someone else's fault. Our idea of a wrathful and angry God is the ultimate form of projection, in which billions of people have taken all the shit in their mind, all the garbage, all the hate, all the subconscious wrath and anger that we have suppressed, and projected it to an imaginary God who lives in the sky. This allows us to escape feeling guilty for our negative thoughts and actions, because now we can say, oh, it's not my fault, it is the fault of God. God here can be replaced by karma, in which you say that it is not your fault, it is just karma. These are games the mind plays to escape its own negative cycle of hate and self-loathing. The God that you find in temples and churches is a God you have created. It is your child. Your illegitimate child, as it were. Your illegal child. A child you are ashamed of. And you try to pretend that if you don't follow some made up silly rules, then this imaginary God you created will punish you. This gives you a false sense of certainty in your life. Oh, I'm following the rules of my religion, I'm a good person. But inside, deep inside, you know that you are not in fact a good person. You're filled with hate, with self-loathing, with disgust for yourself. And these are feelings you cannot face because they are too painful. Because it would be too painful to accept that you, such a perfect person, can have all these horrible feelings. And so you project them onto God. In ancient Indian stories, there was always this theme that a demon would come by and say, "Worship me as the God. I am the God from now on, you must worship me." And he would torture and punish the people until the real God came to help them. Most people today misunderstand the message of this story. They believe that there is an actual demon or foreigners or strange religion that is trying to suppress them or kill them. The demon in these stories, the one who wanted to be worshipped as God, has always been a symbol for our mind. Our mind says, "I am God, worship me." It doesn't say this directly, of course. It creates a God, a mental image of God that it wants you to worship. This mental image that the mind creates is a very simple one that it can understand. An angry, wrathful God. And that you can appease by following a few simple, idiotic rules made up by the priests. Go to the church every Sunday. Go to the temple every Tuesday. Do this ritual, do that ritual, and God will be happy. He will stay off your back. Like a local Mafia Don who won't harass you if you pay protection money. But this mental God that you created, it is as imaginary as your mind that created it. As the Course in Miracles says, the real idols are the mental ideas about God we have. Christianity and Islam, they're also big about not worshipping idols. Oh, idol worshipping is bad. But Christians and Muslims are the biggest idol worshippers in the world. Because the real idol is not something you put in a temple. It is a mental representation of God. A mental idea of God you have. Without any actual experience of God. Most people who talk of God have never actually experienced God. They are like virgins talking about sex. It's even worse than that. Because even if you're a virgin, you have some idea of what is involved in sex. But with God, unless you have experienced a state which cannot be described except as joy, peace, silence, being, Or like the Buddha described it, the end of suffering. Once you experience this state, your suffering goes away. Temporarily at first, and later on permanently. This state of being, this state of consciousness, this state of inner joy, inner peace, state of vastness, spaciousness. This is what the mystics have worshipped as God. It's not some dude sitting in the sky with a beard watching you masturbate and sending you to hell. It's a state of awareness. I won't say a state of mind because the mind has nothing to do with it. You can only experience this state when the mind shuts up for 1 second. And yet, people who experience this state often go quiet, often say nothing, or they spend years in isolation because this state is so hard to describe to the average man. It's like someone who was born blind and deaf and dumb and who didn't have any sense, say his skin didn't feel anything. And you try to describe to such a person what looking at a beautiful rainbow feels like, or what walking in the rain on a hot summer day feels like, or looking at the flowers feels like. It's impossible to describe it. And you get a situation where people who've actually experienced God, experienced this state of being, I call it our true state of being, because the state that we currently live in is a false state. It's an egoic state. Ego here means identifying with the body, identifying with the stream of thoughts. This egoic self that we live in is an illusion. It's not real. It looks real from your current state, but only when you reach the divine state, the state of God, do you realize how foolish, how temporary, almost like a dream that state was. And so people who have experienced this state keep quiet because they don't know how to describe this state. Or they try to use whatever religion they were born in, to try to use the symbols of that religion. And that's why you have had mystics from every religion: Christianity, Islam, Hinduism, Buddhism. Because they experienced this state, but they didn't know how to describe it, so they had to use what they had, which is whatever religion they were born in. But the problem is, these religions are fake. They are like looking at a map, a two-dimensional map. Say you want to visit the Yellowstone Park in America, which is widely accepted as being one of the most beautiful places on earth. And say you just look at a map. The map will tell you exactly where Yellowstone Park is. It will tell you the height of the mountains. It will tell you where the rivers are, where the cities are, where the closest highway is. But looking at the park cannot prepare you for the beauty of when you see the actual thing. And that's the problem with religions. Most people who wrote these religions, who wrote the books, who are such experts on God, who cannot shut up about God, who go on and on and on about what God would want, how God is going to punish you because you're a man and you thought about another man instead of doing it with a woman, or vice versa, or how you're going to hell because you won't accept their mental idea about what a God is. And you have these people who, for no lack of a better term, are more like slum rent collectors. In every slum, there's a mafia lord who collects rent from the people who live there. The thing is that slums are illegal. So there's no concept of paying a rent there because you're already living illegally. But you have to pay the rent or the slumlord will beat you up. His people will beat you up and throw you out. And that's what most religions are. They are slumlords collecting money on behalf of something, a word, God. How easy it is to say God. Yeah, it's like saying rain or car, piano. Yeah, it's just a word. And they use this word without knowing what it means, without ever having experienced that state of joy, that state of joy that Jesus experienced, that even when he was being tortured, he said, "Forgive them, for they know not what they do." Or the state that Buddha experienced, where even his presence would make the most violent criminals go peaceful. Or the state that Krishna experienced, in which he could see the Leela of God, the play of God, even in the middle of war. These were the people who had experienced that state. But most people who use the word God have no idea what it means. It's just an empty word to them. It's actually worse than that, because God means whatever they want it to mean. Whatever the society demands. Whatever is good for the politically powerful. Look at it in India, look at it in America, look at it in the Middle East. Religion and the word God has become a tool to keep certain people in power. To which many atheists will say, "Oh, that's why God is bad." But if you look at the word God and you are immediately angry, then you are no better than the people who are using the word God to make themselves more powerful. Because you have taken this word, a word that you have no experience of, and you have given it a mental idea of what God is. Remember the dude who lives in the sky and wants to make sure that your penis never meets another penis. It only meets a pussy. Well, I think, what's her name? Louise Hay. She's the one who said it. She said, people say that God is this perfect being who created billions and billions of universes and runs all these universes. And yet this God has nothing to do. Then just look at your sex life. God has better things to do than try to interfere in your sex life. I mean, even if you go to a small village or a small town, if you look at the mayor of that small town, even he or she are very busy. Do you think God has time to look at your genitals? The fact is, this is another thing that really gets me. Most people think God is some sort of micromanager who runs the universe. I was driving in a car with someone recently and saw that the government had dug up the roads. And a journey that would have taken 10 minutes will now take 1 hour. And this person really had to reach some place important. It was a very important place. He had to reach it on time. And he got angry and he said, "Why is God doing this to me? What have I done to deserve this? Why is God digging up the roads?" And I said, "God isn't digging up the roads, the government is. Your lazy government. Why are you blaming God? Do you think God has nothing better to do than just dig up the roads just to piss you off? Is that what you think God is? Some dude who sits there micromanaging your life?" Most of us have an experience of a micromanager, directly or indirectly. We either know micromanagers, or we know of people who have worked with them, or we have heard about them on TV or in the newspapers. A micromanager is someone who manages every single detail of your job. It's not enough that saying, "Oh, you need to finish this file by the end of the week." No, the micromanager will come in every day, every 10 minutes. "What have you done? What have you done? What have you done?" We all hate that micromanager. And we have projected that micromanager onto God. God is also a micromanager. He's interfering in our life, running our life. And that's why we are so scared. If I don't go to the temple, God will punish me. Yeah, like God has nothing better to do. But I want to challenge this whole concept that God sits there managing your life. God isn't your boss. God isn't sitting there giving you work to do or planning punishments for you when you don't go to the temple, or when you have naughty thoughts about your sexy neighbor. God is a state of consciousness, a state of being, state of joy and peace that comes from the inside, and that we are all a part of. You, me, everyone, even the so-called wicked people, all your murderers and rapists, even they are a part of their consciousness. The only difference is we have all suppressed that consciousness. We hide, we suppress, we block the light of the divine consciousness that shines on us. The light of God, the light of this consciousness, falls equally on everyone. And it gives us the best that we can possibly hope for. Not just in the spiritual world, but also in the material world. It helps us. It guides us. It tells us what to do when we are facing problems. But we block that light. We create a dam in front of that light. How do we block that light? By getting angry, by getting hateful, by not forgiving people. All these negative emotions, hate, wrath, of feeling that the world is out to get us, holding grievances against everyone. These negative thought patterns block the light of consciousness until we feel scared and lonely, and we feel the world doesn't make sense. We feel that the world is a cruel place. We feel that we are going to die alone. Answer this truthfully. You have felt like this, haven't you? That you are all alone in this cruel world. And that you're going to die alone with no one to love you. We all feel like this. We have all felt like this. And the reason we feel like this is because we have blocked our true source. We have forgotten who we are. We have forgotten that we are not this limited body or this limited mind, but that we are something much greater, much bigger. I call this our natural state of being. Our natural state of being is one of joy and bliss. A state where we realize that not only are we this body, but we are also the sky, the clouds, the rivers, the trees, the mountains, every other human in the world, every other animal and insect in the world, the emptiness in the sky. We are all that. That's what we have forgotten. That's what God is. It's a state, it's a natural state of being. And that's why when you first realize this state, which we can call self-realization, it is realizing your true self, not this false egoic self, but your true self. I was listening to a book by Adya Shanti, and he said that every person who has a self-realization experience, they are surprised by how different it is. And these are people who have been meditating for 10, 15, 20 years. They've been reading books about meditation. They've been reading books about spirituality. They've all read the Gita. They've all read the Upanishads, the Dhammat, the Bible, the Quran. So it's not like these people are new to the whole concept of self-realization. And yet when it happens to them, people are surprised. The most common experience is, it was nothing like I thought it would be. Because this natural state, it is so simple, it is so beautiful, that our mind cannot even grasp it. Our mind loves complexity. It loves a complex religion with millions of rules, with 7 planes of heaven, 7 planes of hell, and with all these rules about which level you will go to, depending on how naughty you were. These are the laws the mind loves. The mind cannot even accept that the state of God, the state, our natural state of being, is such a simple state. There's nothing special about it. An enlightened person is not somebody who floats in the air or who has psychic powers. The biggest enlightened person may be somebody who just is cutting the grass, cleaning their house, cooking food. They're doing the same thing that you do. But they have realized that while they are in the body, while they have form, they are more than the form. And it's a very simple and beautiful state. You can continue doing your normal work. And indeed, many self-realized people don't become gurus, don't write best-selling books, don't have 1 million followers on YouTube, don't become millionaires, and some may not even teach. They may, or they may choose not to. Once you realize who you are, then your own ego becomes, it sort of vanishes. Every action you take is taken from the divine consciousness, the consciousness of God. If God wants you to write a book, you will write a book. If God wants you to teach silently, you will teach silently. That's the power of the God. You get in contact with something much bigger than you, something even bigger than the whole universe. You realize that even while living on planet Earth, in a small country, in a small city, you're actually not here, you are everywhere. You are much bigger than your mind or your body or your country or your race. That's what God is. That's what many mystics have realized. But this God is not present in your temples or your churches. This universal consciousness does not want you to praise it or tell it how great it is, or offer it sacrifices, or kill people for it, or convert people to it. How funny converting people. How can you convert anyone? This consciousness is everywhere, on this planet, on other planets, in the whole universe. How can you possibly convert anyone when we are all a part of this awareness anyway? And that's what's missing from your temples and your churches. They use the word God. They might even put a statue of God. Or if they claim to be, they hate idol worshipping for whatever reason, they put a statue of Jesus, or they put something else, a photo of their prophet. But the fact is, even though they claim to be worshipping God, they have no idea what God is. The God that they worship is just a word to them, a mental image they have created, an idol they have created. And this mental image is a projection of all the hate of humanity. All the garbage of humanity is projected onto some imaginary being, which we use as an excuse to punish people. If you don't do this, God will punish you. If you go to the church or temple, God will punish you. No, He won't. God cannot punish me because I am God. To say that God punishes people is to misunderstand the whole concept of God. Like I said in the beginning, it's a thinking that God is somewhere out there in the sky, looking at you. No. God is you. You are God. I am God. I'm not talking to you. God is talking to God. We are the same, you and me. We are both God. Only difference is, I know this. I felt it. You are also God. Not a God, but the divine consciousness of being. You cannot find God. God doesn't hide behind the sofa. You have forgotten who you are. Like a mental patient, like a schizophrenic, I hope this is the right word, or somebody with Alzheimer's disease. You keep forgetting who you are. You keep thinking that you are your body or your mind. You identify with the thoughts in your head, and you think, this is me. That's not you. Those are just the thoughts in your head. You are God. You are that which you worship. You go to the temples and your churches to find God, when God has always been with you. I hope you realize how foolish the concept of God punishing you is. This divine consciousness, this state of being, it talks to us, it teaches us. But it teaches through love and forgiveness and compassion. Never with punishment. How could it punish us? We are that. We are that divine state of being. To punish us means to punish itself. If God tortured us, God would be torturing himself. It wouldn't make any sense. Besides, A Course in Miracles says this the best. It says that the mind wants punishment because the mind does not want to learn. It does not want to improve. So it lives in guilt. It lives in the concept of sin. Oh, I have been a bad boy. I should be punished. I will be punished in hell. This is what the mind wants. The mind believes in punishment, while God believes in correction. It's true we make mistakes. We are angry, wrathful people. We hate others. We fail to forgive. We are selfish. We are jealous. We do not see the divine in others. We do not show compassion to others, and yet we expect compassion from them. And that's fine. These are mistakes to be corrected, not sins to be punished. As A Course in Miracles says, a mistake can be corrected, but a sin can't. The mind loves sin. It loves the concept of punishment because it gives the mind a reason to stay alive. It is constantly looking for good things and bad things it has done, trying to balance the ledger, as it were. Oh, I did one bad thing, now I will do 10 good things to make up for it. But this divine state of being, consciousness, this God consciousness, doesn't want to punish us. Why would it? Like I said, it's us. We are that state. We are God. We have forgotten who we are. This divine state, it teaches us through love and compassion and with infinite patience. Our sins are not sins but mistakes to be corrected. Sins are not punished. Rather, the mistakes that we make are corrected slowly and with love and with compassion. God does not punish us. God hopes to change us with love. And this is something that can only be realized. You cannot read about it or hear about it. My experience is useless to you unless you do the work, inner work, the meditation, and you have this experience for yourself. So until you do, stop using this G word, stop using the God word. Thank you for listening. From one God to another. I bow to you and I thank you. Thank you. Thank you for listening. If you want a free course on how to contact your inner teacher, your own spiritual guide, the part of the divine who lives inside of you and is guiding your spiritual progress, then please go to my website, thepathtojoy.org. That is thepathtojoy.org. Thank you.